Good evening, everyone.
Kabot Haraf, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Right. Yeah, I think we finished this chapter. We have to go to the next one.
Kabot Haraf,
Yes.
didn't you say you were going to go through the Shulchan Aruch again with us, or no?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I'm gonna do that.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so we'll just go through that one more time. So it says, Israel sheshiger doron lechavero. As we said, right? The Jew sent a gift to his friend, another Jew. But the courier was a goy. So Merav Yom Tov, and this was before Yom Tov. Right? So then what happened was that the goy got held up and he brought it from outside the boundaries on Yom Tov. So now, right, apparently we have a prohibition, but as we said, right, that here the prohibition doesn't really apply. So therefore, mutar afilu lemi shehuva b'shvilo leochlam. Therefore, it would be allowed for the Jew to eat it, even for the Jew that it was brought for him. But he says, right, like we saw yesterday in the Tshuva of the Rashba, that you shouldn't carry it outside of 4 amot. So we already defined that, right? That's talking about outdoors, when you're outside. But if you're in an enclosed area, so if you have like a town which is walled, surrounded by a wall, or alternatively you have some kind of an enclosure, fort, which is made for dwelling, and Yeah, so that would also obviously include, if you're talking about a house, whatever. So the whole house, the whole building would be also considered to be the same thing, since it's an enclosed area. So therefore, in a case like this, it would be allowed to use that item, right, and take it wherever you want within that area, within that enclosure. So that's the Shulchan Aruch. That part was, more or less clear. But now we have the Ramah, right, who's saying some interesting things here. So it says, "V'davka she'aya da'ato metmol." So says the Ramah, when does that apply? Only if he had intention for that item before. What does that mean before? Before Yom Tov. The letbe isu muktzeh, because then it's not going to have a prohibition of muktzeh. אבל אם לא היה דעתו מאתמול, right, it says if it wasn't his intention to use this item, right, then pagav the letbe isur tchumin, even though there is no prohibition of tchumin of what we call it, boundaries, asur mishum muktzeh, but it's going to be forbidden because of muktzeh. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? This is the reason why I wanted to review this, because this Ramah has some very interesting concepts going on here. I'll explain to you what I mean to say. It's that, first of all, right, he's telling you that this item will be muktzah. Now, if you didn't have your mind on it, right, that's what he's saying. But you have to ask a couple of questions here, which is, how is it going to be muktzah, right? We're talking here about food. So how is food going to be muktzah? Right? That's already like a big question that needs to be answered, right? Because usually, when we talk about muktzah, we're talking about things which people do not have in mind to use them on Yom Tov or Shabbat. But here, right, why wouldn't he have in mind to use the food? So the answer is like this. I'll tell you that he's talking about this. He's saying that if this Jew, right, was not expecting to receive this food on Yom Tov or before, he didn't really, want to use it at all on Yom Tov. So therefore, that's why it's called muktzah, because he didn't have in mind to use that item, since it wasn't in his house, it wasn't anywhere. Not only that, but it was also outside his boundary. Right? Okay, but that's not the issue. The question is, did he have in mind to use it? So in other words, if he was expecting to get it, he had in mind to use it then. But the thing is that let's say he wasn't expecting to get it, right? In other words, let's say, this friend of his, right, this Jew, didn't really tell him, ahead of time, you're going to be receiving this item, like keep your eyes open. He didn't tell him anything. Let's say he wants to do like a surprise, surprise! I sent you something, right? Oh, so this guy doesn't know anything about it. So now, right, the Ramah is saying that would be muktzah, because he doesn't expect to have this on Yom Tov. Okay, so let's just read through it. So he says, right, that the rule is something which belongs to a Jew requires preparation beforehand. So he says it's going to be forbidden even for somebody that it was not brought for him, because when it comes to muktzah, we don't differentiate between these things. Okay, that's basically right to the concept of the Ramah here. Now, what I would like to do is see the Mishnah Berurah, because maybe he brings some insights into this whole thing. Right. So the Mishnah Berurah is telling you exactly what I just said. Right. So far, so good. Right. In other words, he's verbatim going in my direction. Okay. Well, that's good. That's a good sign. All right. So let's go on. There's a couple of Mishnah Berurahs here. So I'm just going to check all of them to see what they're about. Um, so here's the clincher now. This is what I was looking for. This is what I was fishing for over here. Uh, so, so the Mishnah Berurah says there are other authorities, who don't agree with the Ramah regarding this issue. So why is that? Let's explain, right? So he says the reason is because, after all, right, as we said, right, we're talking here about food. So even if the Jew is not expecting to get this, to have it on Yom Tov, but he's not ruling out any kind of food, from eating it. Why would he rule that out? Why would he disassociate himself with that? So therefore, right, he's telling you, Mishnah Berurah, there's also some authorities that don't agree with that. Makes sense, by the way. This is what I was looking for. A little bit the other side of the coin, as they say, right? Uh, so just to give you the exact concept the Mishnah Berurah is stating here, it says like this. Right, so he's telling you like this. From the side of the giver, right, the one who sent the gift, what's his intention? His intention is to give this guy this food in order that he should eat it. Obviously, right? That's what he wants. So that's not, the classic definition of muktzah. I mean, just the opposite. So now, what about from the side of the receiver, right? The one who's receiving the gift. What's on his mind? I mean, that's what he's asking here. So he says, um, so it says even the receiver here has no problem. Why is that? Because it says it's not any worse, he says, than fruit which is hefker. So what does that mean? Like ownerless food, which you're allowed to have on Yom Tov, even though you weren't really expecting to get it, and this was not something on your mind. It wasn't on your agenda, but nevertheless, right? After all, it's like a nice surprise. Oh, well, somebody sent me some food. Why not? Let's use it. So he doesn't rule that out from his repertoire, right? This guy. Why should he? So therefore, right, the other opinion goes like that. So interesting, right? Just let's see here. How does the Mishnah Berurah paskin? Does he paskin like the Ramah or like the other opinion? Let's see, right? Let's see what he says here. Yeah. Yeah, so bottom line, right, is that he gives here some leeway to rely on this opinion, the lenient opinion here, in cases of need, right, or whatever. So yeah, I see the point. So right, the bottom line is that you know the words of the Ramah are not so clear cut. You know, I personally, my humble opinion, I definitely would go with the other opinion. It seems more plausible there. Can't tell you that. My humble opinion. Okay. Anyway, that's the story there. So that's what I wanted to cover, and now we did that. We can go to the next chapter, which is Taf Kuf Tet Zayin, right? 516. So let's bring that up. So we have it handy with us. Okay. So let's see the tour. So it says the tour here, מותר לשלוח ביום טוב דורון בין מנות של תבשיל הראוי להאכיל. It says you're allowed to send on Yom Tov a gift, whether we're talking about a cooked dish you can eat, or behema chayav offer, it could be a live animal. Ben chaim shechutim yenot shmanim meselatot kitniot. So it says doesn't matter whether it's live animals or slaughtered animals, wine, right, oil, right, all kinds of produce, and legumes, flour. The Rif matir af b'tvuah. So the Rif allows even grains. The Rambam zal oser, but Rambam forbids grains. So the Rosh also seems to agree with the Rambam to forbid. Okay. So then he goes on. כששולח לא יעשה שורה לשלוח בגימל בני אדם. Oh, so he says, right, that when you're sending this kind of thing to your friend, whatever it is, so he says, right, don't send it, don't make a row, right, of three people, biyachad, together. Mishum de avash milta. Right, so he says, right, it looks like kind of, I guess you could say, right, conspicuous, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, right? Okay. So, again, right, the point is that it's like too loud, it's too, it sticks out too much. when you have three people like that in a row. So he says, what about, so in other words, don't do it that way. But what about if you have three types of, foods with three people? Is that okay? So that was asked in the Gemara, right? That question. Below Ifshitan, it wasn't answered, right? There was no answer there. The Rambam Matir, right? Rambam allows this issue. Okay. Rambam is lenient. Okay, good. So yeah, I guess we can stop there and do the Bet Yosef. So says Bet Yosef, he brings a source for this. Mishnah bePerek Kama de Betza, right? It's a Mishnah in the first Perek of Betza. Where is this? Yudal Amud Bet. Bet Shammai Omrim En Meshalchin B'Yom Tov Ela Manot Ubet. So Bet Shammai says you can only send manot on Yom Tov, right? What is manot? Right, like portions, of food, right? Whatever. Bet Hillel Omrim Meshalchin Behema. So Bet Hillel says we can send animals, right? Wild animals, domesticated, and off also, right? Chayan be'of, and also fowl. Chaim, whether they're alive or shchutim or they're slaughtered. Mishalchin yanot, right? Also, we can send wine, right? And shmanim, right? And also oil, the selatot, flour, kitniot, legumes, right? All these kinds of things, produce. But he says no, we cannot use, we cannot send grain. Rabbi Shimon matir. Rabbi Shimon allows to send even grain, right? Rashi explains, so he says you can't send grains. What's the reason why? So he says because it's not really fitting to use today. Right? Why is that, by the way? Why isn't it fitting? Because it's not prepared, it needs preparation. So because of that, right, what's the point of sending it today if you can't use it on Yom Tov, right? Just you're doing something, right, unneeded exertion. Okay. So why is it that you can't prepare the grains on Yom Tov? Why can't you prepare it? What's the problem? So if you guys remember, we already talked about this a while ago. What the problem is there? Anybody remember? Okay. So if not, I'll tell you. What we said was that you can't grind on Yom Tov, right? The grains. This is the problem. So since you can't grind it, what are you going to do with it, It's not really usable. That's the reason why. But Gemara, Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Matir. So it says over there that Rabbi Shimon allows with the grains, shel chitim, when it comes to wheat, lasot mehem ludiot, to make ludiot with them. What is ludiot? Perush ludiot machal hasui mechitim. So right, it explains, it means that it's some kind of a food which is made from wheat, right? Like let's say, for instance, porridge, right? Whatever, right? Something like that, right? כתב הראש מדהבית עריף ברייתא זו, משמע, so says Rosh, since the Rif brought this Braita, that implies the Pasak Halacha Rabbi Shimon, he passes like Rabbi Shimon. V'lo yadana tama ma, he says, I don't know why that is. Okay. The Rambam Pasak, what about the Rambam? Right? The Perkei Ketana Kama, he passes like the first opinion. Oh. V'chen ikar, and he says that's halakha. He says so. He paskins like the Rambam. All right, there you go. Who was that? The Rosh, right? The Rosh brings the Rif and the Rambam. And he paskins like the Rambam. Okay, good. So then he goes on. וגם הרב המגיד כתב, איני יודע למה נפסוק כרבי שמעון. So this rabbi also says, right? I don't know why he says we should pass like Rabbi Shimon, makom tanakam, in the place of the first opinion. All the more so he says when his reasoning is right, very plausible. Tanakama de azil batar ruba. So he says because the first opinion, goes according to the majority. So he says therefore I paskin like Rabbeinu. Right? Who's Rabbeinu? The Rambam. Ikar. וגם יש מפרשים שפסקו כן. So there's also commentaries that paskin this way. So in other words, bottom line is that seems to be that we should go like the first opinion, and not Rabbi Shimon. Okay, so right now here comes the obvious question: why shouldn't we paskin like Rabbi Shimon? So the answer is because the first opinion is the majority. That's and Rabbi Shimon, is a minority opinion. It's a single opinion, right? So obviously we go like the majority. This is the way we go. So therefore, it makes sense to say that we shouldn't paskin like Rabbi Shimon. But nevertheless, the Rif paskins like Rabbi Shimon, but that's not the halacha. Okay, beautiful. So, so then he brings another reason why we should go like the first opinion, which is what? So he says because his reasoning is very strong. Okay, so he says Leficha. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so that's the end of it, right? So we can see the Shulchan Aruch. See what we got there. We already brought it up, so we're all ready to go. We're set. No delays. So it says like this, right? Shulchan Aruch. Mutar lishloach lechavero biyom tov behema. It says, right, you're allowed to send to your friend, right, on Yom Tov, what? An animal. Right, so chayav of, right, whether it's domesticated wild animal, right, or a bird. So are you allowed to do this on Shabbat to send animals like this?
No.
Why not?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What was that again?
Well, you mean you're supposed to have everything ready for, like, if you're feeding them beforehand, not do anything that is gonna cause you to work on Shabbat.
Okay, so what's the difference between Shabbat and Yom Tov? Why Yom Tov is allowed and Shabbat is not allowed?
Is it rabbinical, perhaps?
Yeah, it's definitely rabbinical, but the question is why? What's the difference? So the answer is because On Yom Tov, right, you can slaughter the animal and eat it. You know what I mean? But on Shabbat, you can't slaughter, right? So what are you going to do with it? You know what I mean? There's no use. So therefore, it's muktzah, right? The animal, on Shabbat. But on Yom Tov, you can do something with it. You can slaughter it, cook it, right? Everything is all good. Make a barbecue, right? It's all good. You're good. But Yom Tov, Shabbat, what are you going to do? Make a barbecue on Shabbat? Right? Hardly, right? Hardly, as they say. So that's the story. That's the reason why. Okay, just keep, making sure you guys are on the ball here, staying sharp. All right, so then he goes on, right? But then he also talks about slaughtered animals as well, right? Meat, right? In other words, you're allowed to send meat, raw meat, on Yom Tov. It was already slaughtered. Okay, I'm going to give you another quiz now. You ready for the second quiz? Quiz number 2. Right. So, what about raw meat on Shabbat? Are you allowed to play around with that?
You can put it in the refrigerator, but you cannot cook it.
Oh, okay. You can't cook it, right? That's for sure.
Mhm.
But is there any use for it on Shabbat?
No,
I'm gonna surprise you. You ready to go? You ready for this?
unless someone is sick and you're unless someone is
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's true what you're saying. But let's say nobody's sick, right? Everybody's healthy, right? Thank God, Baruch Hashem. So then, what's the story? Are you allowed to use raw meat on Shabbat? So the answer is yes. What are you gonna do with it? Right. So the answer is that first of all, there are some people who like to eat raw meat. You know that, right? There's such a thing like this.
yes.
I'm not one of them, by the way. So don't bring me any raw meat on Shabbat. Do me a favor. But I'm not one of them. But like I'll tell you, like my mother, when she she comes from the old generation, the old school. So when she makes, like some kind of a dish, sometimes she eats some of the raw meat. She tastes it. She likes it, I don't like it, but she likes it. That's one thing, There's also another use for raw meat on Shabbat. You know what it is?
No.
You can give it to your animal, to your dog, right? So, that's the reason why raw meat on Shabbat is not muktzah, because it has some uses, That's a trick.
But we're not supposed to have dogs, pet dogs.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Looks like you've been listening to me a lot.
Yes.
So the truth is, that is it really forbidden to have a dog in any case? So the answer is no. It's not really forbidden. I mean, depends on how what you do with it. You know what I mean? So I'll explain to you guys, right, what that means. That they say, in the Talmud, if you really want to have a dog, okay? So what you should do is, you got to keep it on a leash. Don't let it run around, like free, outside, because it could bite somebody, whatever. So you got to keep it on a leash. When you take it outside, right outside your property. That's one thing, and also you shouldn't buy like a dog which is like one of the dangerous ones. You know what I mean? A bad breed. One of those bad boys. If you know what I mean. So, in other words, yes, it's true. According to the Talmud and according to Kabbalah, it's not recommended to have a dog, for several reasons. I'm not going to get into the whole thing now, why that is, but look at my posts and you'll see, right? I already listed everything. But yeah. So that's true. I'm going to tell you guys something really funny. One of my converts, okay, who you may not know who she is. I'm not sure if you know her. I'm not going to mention her name now. But anyway, right, what happened was that she had a dog. She also had some cats, whatever, all kinds of things. She's a pet lover. She likes pets, So, a lot of people are like this, in America, they like pets, whatever, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, right, I told her, I told her, I said, she was about to get divorced. She was on her way to divorce. So I told her, I said, right, that if you get divorced, you have to get rid of your dog. You're not going to be able to keep it anymore. So she had like a small dog, like a poodle kind of thing, poodle. Not something dangerous, what I mean? Not exactly one of those, deadly dogs, what I mean? But, dog is a dog, whatever, right? So anyway, right, I told her, but, if you get divorced, though, you got to get rid of it. You know why that is? Anybody know why? Because it says in the Shulchan Aruch that a single woman, like divorced, widow, or whatever, is not allowed to have a dog if she's living alone in the house. Why? Because people will suspect, that some hanky-panky going on there. You know what I mean? Excuse my candor, right? So it says in Shulchan Aruch, if you're a single girl, right, divorced, widowed, whatever, right, you're living by yourself, you should not have a dog in the house. It's not allowed. So there, it's really not allowed at all in any way, shape, or form. So I told her, I said, you're going to have to get rid of the dog. So we start to have like some arguments about this. Me and her. Back and forth. She's the pet lover, and I'm the pet right hater. Whatever, right? Whatever, right? We have a conflict going on. So what she comes and tells me, she says, he says, Rabbi, he says, don't you know? Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe had a dog. So in other words, she was trying to tell me, like, what, are we holier than the Lubavitcher Rebbe? What do you want from me? What? You ever hear about this? Did he have a dog?
No.
No,
So
you
he kept it.
I'm sorry?
I've heard about it. That he had a guard dog or something like that.
Oh,
He had a
okay,
lot of
good. Yeah,
people.
maybe I told you. Did I tell you?
Yes, you did say it.
Okay, I told you. Yes. Now I'm telling everybody else. Right now, it's not a secret anymore. Now everybody knows. Right. So, it's right. So, what's the story with that? Right. So I have some friends who are like Chabad rabbis. So I went to them, and I said, "Is that true that Rebbe had a dog?" So they told me yes, he had a dog, but not exactly right what this lady thought. Right? It wasn't for a pet. It was a guard dog. Why? Because the Rebbe had some enemies, I mean, that didn't like him. So he was probably getting threats, and because of that, he had to protect himself. You understand? So he had a dog, like probably like one of these German shepherds, one of these things, guard dogs, whatever. So I don't know exactly what it was, but whatever, one of those, But it wasn't. They told me, that he didn't keep it in the house. It was in the yard. So he wouldn't bring it into the house. So it was a guard dog. It wasn't a pet. I mean, it's not like they're they're playing around with him, and he's doing, he's jumping around, and playing with the ball. It's not like that. So anyway, right? So because his life was in danger, that's why he had it. That's what that's pretty much what I heard. So I told this lady, I said, that's not the same thing. We're not talking about a guard dog. Your dog is not a guard dog. It's a poodle. You know what I'm saying? Just you're doing it for fun. For a pet. Not the same thing. That's exactly what I meant to say. That not every dog is the same. It depends on why you have the dog. Like there are in the Turkey, that area, right? Caucasian area. There are people who have these, these guard dogs, that they guard the sheep from the wolves. You know what I mean? We're not talking about that. That's not our discussion. That's allowed for sure. You want to guard your sheep so they shouldn't get killed by the wolves. That's okay. No problem with that. So, in other words, there are, scenarios where a person is allowed to have a dog, even though, again, right, it's not recommended. All kinds of issues there. I'm not going to get into it now. But anyway, right, look at my posts. So, that's the story, right? So, in other words, bottom line, getting back to our discussion, is that since really, sometimes a person is allowed to have a dog for a certain purpose, right? Like the Rabbi, the Rabbi had a dog. So if that's the case, then you're allowed to have also raw meat to feed the dog. So there is a use for, for raw meat on Shabbat. So therefore, raw meat on Shabbat is not muktzah, But when it comes to live animals, that's muktzah, right? That's something else. So you can't send live animals, to a Jew on Shabbat. But on Yom Tov, since you're allowed to slaughter it and cook it and write everything and make a barbecue, no problem, right? You can send it, no problem. Okay, good. So that's one thing, right? And then we're going to get to the other items, right, that we talked about, which is, how do you call it? Yenot, right? Wine. You can send wine to your friends, right? That even on Shabbat you can do, right? Send wine. Why not? As long as we said, right, you have to have an eruv, though, right, in order to send it. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem there. But on Yom Tov, you don't need an eruv. Okay. And then we talked about oil, right, selatot, flour, kitniot, legumes. So all these things, one Jew is allowed to send to his fellow Jew on Yom Tov. No problem. But lot tevuah, right? But not, as we said, right? Not grains. Grains you're not allowed to, right? Anybody remember what I just told you? Why? What's the reason why you're not allowed to do grains?
You can't grind.
Because you're not allowed to grind, right? You see that, right? As we said, right? Okay, good. Grinding is forbidden on Yom Tov. Right? So that's the story. Okay. So I guess we'll stop it there. Right? And we'll continue next time, B'ezrat Hashem, which is Thursday, right? Tomorrow. And thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. And we'll see you tomorrow. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch.
Laila Tov. Thank you.
All the best.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
God bless.